Okay, so in this video, I'm going to kind of build on something I did in one of the previous videos where I was talking about how you clear people's hands, how you get past people's hands. So anyway, so I'm moving with Jack, and one of the things I always point out is, you know, your body is a part of your ability. You cannot avoid that. So because Jack is about the same size as myself, you know, it's kind of even Steven. But the idea is if Jack uses his body more efficiently, he can get the same benefit out of being evasive and dealing with my reach, whether I have a reach advantage or not. No different than a person who's shorter than me. And my point is, if it works for a person who has less reach than me, then it's got to work for me. So when I'm throwing strikes at Jack, if he moves as little as he needs, and we're going slow on purpose so people can see this, trying not to challenge it per se, but to try to either redirect it or get out of the way of it, what happens is in the moment where I got to make a decision to recover, if he's already, continue my friend, if he's already moving in a manner, whereas within the movement, he's also making the adjustment he needs to knock my block off, it cuts down the amount of time I have available to me to be able to make a decision. In other words, we'll do it this way so people can see. You know, this is hypothetical. Let's say I'm on the inside, because you always hear people say, well, if I get on the inside, you know, because they get crazy of whether they're on the inside of the hands, the outside of the hands. Me, I don't give a crap. As long as I can feel where your hands are, that's all I need to know. Good enough for government work and that kind of thing. So I'm throwing a punch. And as I'm throwing this, because Jack can feel where I am relative to his body. Okay, right there, while it's hard to see on the camera, I already missed. He doesn't have to move that much. And notice as he's doing this, we'll go slow. His arm is actually making adjustments. So even if I'm trying to do this, he can make those adjustments because he didn't push my hand away or give up his hand. It's not that he doesn't have the leverage to do those things. It's that he's developed a touch where he's moving as little as he needs and using as little force as he needs, if necessary, to be able to ensure I continue to move in the same direction. So he's kind of setting me up. So what's going on here is, you know, I'm throwing this and he's leading and pacing me, right? So now I'm trying to make the up too late, nighty-night. That's what's going on. But notice he's positioning his body and he's moving his body first before he's doing stuff with his hands, because his hands will always catch up to what his body's doing. So when you're practicing clearing people's hands, whether your hands are on top, whether your hands are on the bottom, I don't get wrapped around the axle with that stuff, because here's the thing. My hand goes there. Okay, see how he cut that off and blocked it? Why was he able to block it? And this is going to be on the test too, by the way. I think there's math at the end of this video. There's like a couple math problems. But all seriousness, is because he can perceive where my hand is relative to his body. Because once you break the plane of the sphere of influence of another human being, they know where you are on some level. This is why when you see street fights on YouTube, you know, people are like this, doing this. Well, why are they doing that? Because they don't want to get hit, but they actually feel the other person's hands. That's why if you slow these videos down, it's pretty amazing how close their hands get to hitting each other in the face but miss, because people are still moving. So on a visceral level, or what they call proximity, we can actually feel these things. So Jack is feeling this, plus he's also visually, he can see this. And so what he's doing here though is he's not pushing this. He's making light contact, and now, oh, that sucked. And what he did was, by moving his body, he maintained the full range of motion with his hand, and he redirected my arm. Because what he was doing was, instead of pushing it, he's changing the vector to ensure it continues to move in the direction he wants it to go. And because he's not trying to stop my hand, in essence, as he guides me into the path or into the space he wants me to enter into, he gets to clear my hands without actually having to do a whole lot and saving time for himself. So when I'm moving with people, one of the things I like to do to help them develop the skill is I like to move slow and give them enough to work off of. Then as they start hitting off of this stuff, I try to get them to, as they feel openings as soon as possible, just start hitting. In warrior flow, because we don't care about anybody else's flow, we only concern ourselves with ending the fight as quickly as possible. However we do that, you know, pick the garbage can up and hit him in the head, that kind of thing. The thing is, we only deal with people's hands by exception and not as a rule. And the reason we deal with their hands by exception is because of a fundamental understanding. If my hand is going toward him, he doesn't know what the hell I'm doing. Don't move. Is it going to be a punch? Is it going to be, a sphere hand? Is it going to be, a palm strike or whatever? He doesn't really know. But what he does know is this motion here originates from the same place and starts from the same position. And no matter what it is, it doesn't matter because the context of the fight is whatever I'm doing, it can't be good for him. So what happens is, as I'm throwing this, see where his hand is doing. What's going on is, stay there please, is he can feel where I am relative to his body. Let's do the other side so people can see this, I'm sorry. So he can feel this. He can viscerally feel this. If he touches it, now he has 100% certainty. Out in here, he's like 99% sure. And as he's moving his body and tracking this, now he can make whatever decision he wants to make. In other words, he's only dealing with my hand if he has to. By dealing with my hand as an exception and not as a rule, it prevents him from giving up his own hands to play patty cake with me when he should be knocking my block off. And it's a terrible mistake people make. This is one of the reasons why when we do our sensory flow exercise, we always are trying to learn how to recognize the pattern in another person's motion, no matter what they're doing. Because the more you learn to recognize the pattern, at a certain point, you start picking up that kind of embodied cognition, those heuristics of, okay, I see his shoulder, I feel his shoulder rising, and he's probably trying to hit me. I'm going to get out of the way, and then I'm going to punch him in the chin or the throat or whatever I'm going to do as hard as I can before he has a chance to do something. And the reason why we deal with people's hands by exception, not as a rule, is because it's simple. If I know where his hand is, relatively speaking, and I can position myself where I can block it, then I had to know where it was. Usually what happens with 99.9% of the human population, when your hands get near them, their hands don't go to where your hands are. Their hands always go to a place where they can actually intercept your hand. Pretty interesting how we do that. We have the instinct where we always will position our hands. You're pulling down some nonsense in the house and a box falls, right? You don't go like this. You don't throw high block, right? You get your hands out in front, and even if you're moving your hands in a frantic manner, you have a sense of where the object is because you're trying to get your head out of the way. So this is a very, basic human skill that we all have. But then when it comes to fighting, we act like people don't know how to do this. Even though I can show you YouTube videos of people successfully going like this and sometimes knocking people on their ass simply because their reaction was just better. So because he can feel where my hands are relative to where his hands are, it's a matter of who can get to the future position first and end the fight. The other reason why we're focused on dealing with people's hands by exception and not as a rule is because if I'm moving with Jack and I can get here and end the fight, I will. Because why? I don't know what he's got in his hands or whether he's got a weapon. Or I'm assuming he may try to get to a weapon. So if I got to deal with his hands, I deal with his hands. If I don't have to deal with his hands, I won't. And what I mean by that is, if I got to make physical contact and do something to redirect his hands, I'll do that. If I got to grab his hand for some reason, because maybe he has an object I don't like a knife or something like that, I will. And I'm going to throw them. Or, sometimes I see people doing stuff like this, like turning the guy's hand. I'm just going to throw them. I can always take the pen out of their hand later on and then, start doing stuff like that. The point I'm making is I deal with people's hands as an exception and not as a rule. And then as I'm clearing things, I'm trying not to play patty cake. The moment I clear your hands, I'm hitting. So if I'm trying to do something with Jack, oh, that sucked. The moment I tried to clear his hands, he felt what I was doing. He repositioned his body and he hit me. Think of a battle, kind of like a medieval joust, right? Two guys on horseback, right? They're riding like this with a lance. And the guy who does this at the right moment is the one that wins. So that's how I look at it. So when we're doing the sensory flow exercise, we're trying to develop the ability to recognize the patterns in another person's motion soon enough to do something about it. That's all we're doing. And there's obviously a lot more to it, but at its most essential and fundamental level, that's really what's going on. When I'm moving with people, I can feel everything they're doing. So when I start moving like this, what I'm doing is I'm trying to throw off their perception of what they think is going on, because I know they can feel what I'm doing, even if they're not aware they're doing that. So hopefully this answers some questions for some folks, because I got some questions about this kind of stuff. You know, I also appreciate all the folks that went out and bought the book, Lessons from My Masters. And hopefully it's, you know, because I can tell just from some of the responses, it's really clarifying a lot of things for a lot of people. The things my masters were doing, they were not aware of, because of the fact that, you know, my masters and when they did stuff like, you know, especially Grandmaster Perkins, it was just so intuitive to him. It was just who he was. So he was always doing these things, even if he didn't explicitly say it, because it was, like I said in the book, it's just John being John. If you didn't get the book, you need to go get the book, because in that book, I clarify so many things. It makes everything we do in Warrior Flow make perfect sense, because Warrior Flow is really an extrapolation of what my masters were actually doing. Not what they said they were doing, but what they were actually doing, but with the modality of training that you as an individual can learn how to do these things within your body to varying degrees. And if you got more God-given physical talent, you know, then you can do more. That's all it is.